Hey everyone, just come back from shooting a bunch of 44 special at the range. Thought I would give a quick demonstration of the process I go through to clean up the brass and tumble it. Right now I'm currently sorting out 44 special as well as any 44 Magnum or 45 Colt that I found at the range, as well as 357 38 special. I only shot 44 special today, but without fail, every time I go to the range, I come back with some 357 and some 38 special. And I certainly want to do my part for the environment, right? My good civic duty, so I help clean up all that brass that other people left out there for me. In fact, there is enough brass out there that I never buy 38 special, and my brass supply for the 38 special is always increasing. I don't currently load for 45 Colt, but I'm saving up enough that I think eventually I will get to that point. So yeah, when I come back, I always take a bucket like this when I'm shooting, and all of my brass from my revolver or my rifle or whatever I'm shooting goes into there, and any brass I pick up from the ground as well. First thing I do when I come back is I sort it out. In general, 38, 357 Magnum goes together, 44 Special, 44 Magnum, 45 Colt I throw together. Then I will deprime all the brass, and then I will wet tumble it. Mixing things up in the tumbler, it works some ways. 45 Colt, 44 Special, 44 Magnum tumble together just fine, but you have to be careful when you mix some of them, like a 38 Special and a 44 or 45. They'll get stuck inside of their pins jammed in there, and then some of the brass doesn't get very clean. So sorting helps for depriming as well as when you're tumbling. Actually, 45 Colt, and I got a 30-06 here. You can be careful with those two if you tumble them together, because a 45 Colt will fit, and I've had that happen before when tumbling. Yeah, it's I don't reload currently 45 auto or 9 mil. There's plenty of that brass out there. I leave it out there, but any of this revolver brass, it may be dirty. Look at this. It may be a bit stepped on, but most of that is salvageable. Most of that will clean up, and with a sizing die, we can make that round again and reuse those. Reuse this brass many times over. I deprime all of my brass with the Lee decapper. Get the appropriate shell holder here. Run that down till it touches. The shell holder. All right. And then I just start running the brass through. So there's the primer is in there. The decapper doesn't do anything to size the brass. It only pushes the primer out. And you don't have to deprime your brass before you tumble. A lot of people don't. I like to. It's not a matter of necessity. It's a matter of personal preference. Actually, I didn't used to tumble my brass at all. When I first started reloading, I didn't shoot very high volume at all, and I did not didn't really see a need for tumbling. I knew you could, but I would just take the brass I'd fired, essentially wipe it off, and reload it. When I started shooting more, shooting higher volume, I realized I was interested in tumbling, and as I looked at the options of what was out there, I became very interested in wet tumbling. At the time I was looking at it, it seemed to be a cheaper option. I bought one of the Harbor Freight single drum rock tumblers. I don't remember exactly what it cost me. It was less than $50. About a couple pounds of steel pins, and with the steel pins, it was a media that never wore out. Oh, look at that one. So even the funny shaped brass, this universal decapper handles just fine. But yeah, with the steel media, I've been using that same media for a few years now, and it's as good as the day I bought it. With the wet tumbling too, the brass sure comes out looking shiny, and I really like that. It doesn't have any of that residue the dry tumbling leaves on it. And I got little kids in the house, and with the dry tumbling, a lot of the dirt, the lead, the who knows what ends up in the air as the tumbler runs. And with the wet tumbling, none of that ends up in the air. It all ends up left in the water and goes down the drain. And so, for many reasons, once I started tumbling, I started wet tumbling, and I've always used the wet tumbling. I did recently buy one of the vibratory tumblers, but I've never used it for tumbling. I use it for applying powder coat to lead bullets. All of my tumbling has been wet tumbling, and I've been very happy with it. In fact, I will finish depriming all of this brass after I finish the 357s. I'll change the shell holder. I'll take care of the 44s and the 45s, and then we will move on to the wet tumbling process, and I'll show you that in just a second. Here you can see the Harbor Freight 2-drum rock tumbler that I've been using for the last year and a half. It's been working perfect. Inside of these drums, I keep, in both drums, I've got a pound each of these steel pins, and I just leave them in here at all times. We'll go ahead and fill this one up with the 38 Special and the 357 Magnum brass. There's a little line in here that this lid goes up against. I just make sure the brass stays below that line. Fill up this drum with a 44 Special, 44 Magnum, and 45 Colt brass. Now these drums don't hold anywhere near as much brass as the, say, the Tumbler's Tumbler or the the Frankfurt Arsenal tumbler, but these will work just fine for me. Again, I'll fill it up till it's a little bit under that line, and then I will put some water in there and some soap. And let me go fill them up with the water, and I'll be right back. Now that we have the water in here, I'll go ahead and put a little bit of Dawn dish soap. Again, make sure the water covers the brass, but it's below that line where the lid will sit. And I just eyeball the amount of soap. Doesn't take much. That Dawn will help clean the dirt and the grime off. I'll put a pinch of Lemmy Shine in there, which is a soap as well, but it's very high in citric acid, and it really makes that brass shine. That's about all it takes. And then put the lid on, and these lids seal up just fine. I've run this for hours before, and I never get more than a drop of water that leaks out of there, if that. Put both the drums on there, turn it on. Sometimes it needs a little help to get started. And I will let that sit there for 3 hours. I'll come back in 3 hours and pull those off. Alright, it's been a little over 3 hours now. Just pulled these off the tumbler. And let's go ahead and separate the brass from the pins and get them rinsed off. Now, first thing I do is I drain all the dirty water out of here. Most of it. Give it a little bit of a rinse. and then I'll pull out, I just reach in there by hand and pull out each piece of brass one by one, shake the pins off, leave them back in the tub. Probably better, faster to use some sort of media separator. I don't have one, and this has always worked just fine for me. Look how dirty that water is. The nice thing about that is none of that went up in the air. It's all going down the drain. So I'm not breathing any of that, and none of my family is either, as you could possibly end up doing if you were using the vibratory tumbler and some sort of walnut or corncob media to clean these. And this seems to be about the right capacity. I just empty the brass into here, drop all the pins back in the bucket. This just takes me a minute or two for each drum. Once I'm sure I have all the brass out of there, I'll give this a quick rinse just to make sure none of the dirt or grime is left in the pins as I store them. Kind of rinse the pins off. I just leave them in the drum permanently. Rinse that off. Now it'll be ready to go next time I'm ready to tumble. Then I go and I rinse my brass off. 2 or 3 times usually. I usually take a cloth, dump the brass into that cloth out of the cup, just kind of shake the excess water off. And then I've got a plastic Tupperware-like box with a rag in it, and I normally just pour those out in there, and that's where they'll sit until they're dry. And now I'll do the other drum that has the 44 and 45 brass in it. Okay, there it is. The brass was deprimed. It was tumbled and cleaned. It's been rinsed off, and now here it is to dry. There's my larger brass, and there's the 38 357 Magnums. I don't know how well you could tell in the video before, but some of this was pretty dirty, pretty tarnished, and that's cleaned up pretty nice. I'll see if I can't get a good picture and throw it in here in a second of the before and after. As you can see, we still have some misshapen brass, and some of that we'll have to run through the sizer to make sure that it's actually recoverable, but most of that should be, if not all of it. But now it's just a matter of letting it dry before I put it away. Used to use a hair dryer, a combination of things, or try to stick it out in the sun to let it dry, but I found I can just leave it here in my shop, and in a few hours it'll be dry enough to put away and store, and good until I need it. And when I do need it, I'll pull it out, prime it, put the powder in it, put the bullet in it, go to the range, and start the cycle all over again. Now again, the primer pockets don't have to be clean to reload. I don't think it ever causes an issue on pistol brass, but just to show you part of the reason I deprime, look at those. That's just from the wet tumbling. and just to prove to you that some of this type of brass you'll find on the ground at the range is recoverable, I picked out some of the special ones here. Just a quick run through of the sizer die. Hardly any pressure at all. Good enough to put powder in. So I'd love to hear any comments, questions, discussion, any experiences you have cleaning up your brass, wet, dry tumbling. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.